Hi everyone, it's Dr. Hudgens. I have read your strategic planning papers this morning and have provided feedback in the rubric that you'll find in Blackboard. I highly encourage you to go into that rubric and read all of the feedback that you are provided. It's so important that you take the time to review that and touch base with me if you have questions or concerns, or if my feedback's not clear, or even if you read my feedback and you disagree. I'm happy to discuss it, especially within the week after I've given you feedback. When it's relevant and current, we can discuss any concerns you have. In the strategic planning paper, you guys had some great insights. This is a really tough paper. You're asked to really synthesize a lot of information and do so in a scholarly manner. And we're doing it early on in the course, which makes it even more challenging. Your classmate Will did, I think, one of the best jobs of really giving good insight into what the value of strategic planning is. Will wrote in his paper that a healthcare organization without a strategic plan is not dissimilar to a boat without a rudder. The organization, like the boat, will be pushed around as changes in healthcare legislation or local competitions increase. This forces the organization to react to the changing times instead of planning how to capitalize on new changes. That's such a great insight, and Will is absolutely correct. And many of you also mentioned this with the advent of changes, all the things that are going on in healthcare. It is so hard to keep up with things, especially if you have your own plan, your own ideas of where you want to go. You're halfway down the road working on a project that's important to you, that's part of your strategic plan, and then organizational changes occur. If you don't have a solid understanding and you haven't disseminated your strategic plan, it's easy for those things to get off course. So for me, I'm a very visual person, so the idea of a boat without a rudder is very much similar to an organization without a clearly understood and disseminated strategic plan. So I appreciate the insights that Will shared with that. From an APA standpoint, you guys are doing a great job. There are two areas that I want to remind you to continue to focus on. Go into your APA manual and read the how to use level headings. There are multiple levels that should be used in this course. This paper, because of the complexity of it, easily should have used level 1 and level 2 heading. Many of you got brave and used level 3 headings, and this paper was completely appropriate for a level 3 heading. There were enough subcomponents to each section that you could attempt to do that. The other thing that I'll encourage you to do is look at using multiple references or multiple in-text citations to support a single paragraph. If your section that had comparisons where you had two authors saying the same thing, an effective way to do that would be to write your sentence that says these authors agree on this concept, and then at the end put a compound or a double in-text citation. So you would put those in-text citations at the end. They would be in alphabetical order like you'd see them in the reference list, but they'd be separated by a semicolon. So it could be Smith 2014 semicolon, Watkinson 2016, and both of those are in a parentheses. That's an effective way to say both of these authors say this. Instead of saying all of the authors' names in the beginning of the sentence, it gets really wordy and can get unwieldy. So I want you to think about how to use level headings effectively, how to use multiple in-text citations at the same time to support shared ideas. And the other thing that I'm still seeing a little bit of is the use of direct quotes in excess. Occasionally, there are times that no one can say it any better, that a direct quote is completely appropriate. But that's going to be an outlier. It's not going to be a common thing. Most of your work in a graduate level paper should be synthesized content. And sometimes I see students struggling, wanting to really make sure they get their point across, so they don't want to misunderstand what an author says. So they use large block quotes and put in what they say, what the author says, instead of synthesizing it. And I appreciate you wanting to avoid plagiarism and you want to make sure you're accurate, but that is an undergraduate skill. You need to be able to read something and integrate it into its new meaning. And that includes Bible verses. I love reading papers and there's God's word in there, but I love even more when you can tell me why it matters. Your classmate Terry did a fantastic job of giving us an example of that this week. Terry used Proverbs 24 verse 6, which tells us, "For by wise counsel thou shalt make the war, and in a multitude of counselors there is safety." That's the King James Version. Instead of citing that entire proverb, what Terry wrote was Proverbs 24:6 tells us that battles are won by listening to advice and making lots of plans. This proverb, in essence, is the essence of strategic planning, as success is achieved by good data and a comprehensive plan. And Terry's spot on. When you read the meaning of this verse, that's exactly what they're talking about. They're talking about gathering all the information you can, making sure you talk to all the right people, and then put a plan in action. So in this case, a war is successful. I know healthcare sometimes feels like you're in a war, but we're not. But that's the idea behind it. So that's a good example that Terry is providing by synthesizing God's word. And the scholarly manner of taking God's word and being able to say, I've read this verse and here's how it matters. Here's how it connects with the content. That's that one step above just citing a verse and saying, okay, I think this is relevant. And that's really my goal for you as you move through this course, is that you start reading articles, you start reading scholarly sources, you start reading God's word, and you can tell me, and this is how it matters. Don't spit it back to me and cite it, but tell me. The so what? Why does it matter? So I want you to start thinking about those types of things and working towards making those improvements. For next week, you've got a paper on power, which is very brief. Make sure you follow those page limits. Concise writing, you're going to be done in just a couple of pages. It's really a very straightforward paper. You also are going to be turning in your annotated bibliography, which is a great starting point for your final paper. I want to remind you that when you do your annotated bibliography, you need to be in the literature. It's okay to use a few of your books. An occasional website may be okay, but the primary support for your final paper needs to be scholarly sources. So make sure that when you are looking through the journals, that you're looking for peer-reviewed articles that are less than 5 years old and things that are not opinion and commentaries. They need to be research evidence-based. Spend some time and really weed through those articles. I've had students ask me if we only need, I think your final paper is maybe 7 to 10 sources on your final paper, but you're asked on your annotated bibliography to use 10 to 15. The reality is, anytime you write a good paper, you scour the sources and you pull as many relevant topic articles and sources as you can. And when you finally get down to writing, you're not likely going to use all of them. And you may get feedback from me that maybe some aren't the best sources to use. So the idea is to throw a wide net when you start and then narrow down as you write to only use the ones that are really essential and most relevant to your paper. So that's the reason you're asked to do, more than the exact number that's needed for your final paper. If you make the time now to do your annotated bibliography correctly and you're thoughtful and you get good sources, your final paper will be so much easier. So look at the instructions for your final paper and then go back to your annotated bibliography and begin to work on that. If you have questions as you go through your work this week, touch base, email me. I'm happy to answer questions either related to the feedback from this week or any plans for next week's assignment. Know that I'm here. Remember, I know that virtual learning can feel like you're out alone in the world, but you're not alone. I am here. I look forward to hearing from you and know that I'm praying for your success. Y'all have a great week. Stay cool.